Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Hopefully you enjoyed a nice lunch. Hopefully not too heavy, so as you're wide awake and buzzing for the talk that we're just about to go through. My name's Murison. I'm the Managing Director of Catalyst in the Europe or EMEA region, part of Catalyst Group. You may have seen us. Some of you may know us. Some of you may have worked with us. We'll come to that in a moment. I hope to get all of you a little bit involved in some of the stories or some of the horrors on some occasion that I walked through today that have got us to where we are today, which is probably one of the leading higher education Moodle providers and Moodle experts in this community, but probably on Earth. It's been a long journey, and I'm going to give you a walk through that journey now. I will be taking some questions. Normally in this session we get 20 minutes, and I normally find myself cramming at the end to make sure that I fit inside the 20 minutes. Today we have an hour, and I have the opposite problem, but I hope that we'll end up with a good 15 minutes at the end for some Q&A if you have any questions. All of the stories we're going to talk about today are real-life examples. We are here celebrating or talking about Moodle, probably one of the leading, or certainly the leading education open source platform that has been around for 3 years. And one of the main things that I hope you take away today is that open source, as we feel, or as we believe, does not end in sharing code, but it actually involves significantly sharing experience, sharing success, sharing failure, and sharing learnings. And that's exactly what we do every day through the positives and the challenges that we experience. So Catalyst is 30 years old. We were founded in New Zealand, a small country on the other side of the earth that punches above its weight. There are a number of New Zealand's, one of our founders is here in the audience today. When we succeed in New Zealand for the first sort of 10 years, you naturally move to Australia. So we have an Australian contingent who also work in Catalyst Australia. And probably you have a relative who lived in the UK, and so you naturally move and base yourself in the UK as well. And so we have a UK office, which is well represented here, being that we're in Scotland. And then when you fly from Australia to the UK, you stop in Canada. And so we've now formed Catalyst Canada, who is also represented here today, giving us a really wonderful spread around the world of people in time zones that can help us to provide our expertise and our support for your Moodles in a 24/7 basis. We look after, in varying form, hundreds of Moodles around the world, but we specialize in higher education and universities in particular. How many of you here are representing a university or a higher education? Good, probably half. You guys are quite hard work. Takes quite a long time to get it right, to make sure that we're providing you with the level of service and level of platform and level of end user experience that you require for your students and for your staff and for your ultimate goals. We don't just provide Moodle hosting, support, coding, and expertise and then keep hold of that. We are strong advocates of the open source ideals, and we give back to the Moodle project significantly. How many of you know that you're using a Catalyst plugin in your Moodles? How many of you are not sure? You are. Almost certainly. And if you're not, there are hundreds of Catalyst plugins that have made their way into Moodle Core, and thousands of lines of code that Catalyst have provided back to Moodle Core to ensure that Moodle continues to evolve and improve in the way that an open source project should. We do provide a big wide range of Moodle services, and I'll be talking about all of those today in examples with these institutions that you see listed across the bottom, from the beginning of the UK journey to where we are today. I'm going to anchor my talks today in the Catalyst UK experience and the partnerships that we've formed from this team in this office, but the experience that I'll go through has been pretty much the same in all of our other territories. And so in Australia, all of the higher education partnerships that they've formed have probably followed similar learnings and similar journeys, similar in Canada, similar in New Zealand. It's just that the context I can speak to is here in the UK. And then as a little gift yesterday, I was very proud to note that the Guardian University Guide listed their top 10 universities yesterday, 5 of which are partners of my team here in the UK and of the Catalyst Group. That's fantastic. Okay. So, we originally decided that we were going to specialise in the higher education space, or in the university space, around about 10 years ago in the UK business. New Zealand and Australia had already started to have some successful partnerships with universities of note, Monash, La Trobe, the universities in New Zealand, Victoria, various others in that part of the world. And it just seemed right for us that we could use that expertise that we'd already developed to build out our offering, or build out a service and a support offering to the higher education sector. When we first explored what that would mean, or what the problems we might be solving were, 5 in particular stood out. Who here knows whether they are self-hosting their Moodle, looking after the Moodle themselves in-house? Great, good, probably 20%. Who here is, speak truthfully, hosted with a non-Moodle partner? 10%? Oh dear. And who here would prefer not to say? Okay, that's good, we're all honest, that's lovely. I assume that means everyone else is hosted with a partner, so that's good. Anyway, when we first recognised that we could probably provide some help to this sector, or to these Moodle institutions, we very much firstly looked at self-hosted, because we were seeing a consistent and common theme coming from self-hosted Moodle universities in that they were struggling. Moodle does require quite a lot of specialism in various areas, including infrastructure, hosting, coding, governance, and then use or application of the tool. We picked out that in many cases, Moodle versions were not being maintained or upkept. People were falling behind in the version of Moodle that they were running. That was having security impacts or risks, certainly, but also feature and performance impacts. Generally, it leads to a detrimental view of Moodle. People blame Moodle for the fact that it doesn't do something, or that they wish it did something which they've seen it can do in a next version, but which their Moodle doesn't do today. Often that is pointed squarely at the application as being at fault, and that's not really fair, but you can understand how that comes along. Budgets are always tight. Internal teams who are hosting or self-hosting generally were looking after myriad of technology tools, thousands in some cases. I'm not sure if any of you have seen the kinds of application or software maps that some of the universities have put together recently, and there's literally hundreds or thousands of tools listed on a single slide. And then there's normally a team of maybe 10 in total that are expected to look after all of that. It's quite a significant challenge. With those limited IT sort of resources, there was always a growing risk. The internet is becoming more and more dangerous and more of a risky landscape. People are constantly trying to attack or to leverage the internet to gain some kind of nefarious sort of access or purpose. And we were seeing that risk was becoming severe, but also starting to be understood and taken more seriously by these large universities. And they needed a solution to that problem. And they were very clear from the first 2 points that there was challenges to solving it themselves. Finally, there is a new digital native, as we call them, emerging into the university space as a student who expects much more from their platform than a repository of PDFs written in 1993 that were just dropped into your VLE in replacement of a overhead laminate projector. That was kind of the behavior we would often see, and there was not really a good implementation plan for how to get the most out of the platform. But then the one big thing that we were always pushed back with is, well, you will lock us in. You are a vendor, and you will come along, and you will make it impossible for us to leave, and you will extort us, and so on. So these are the things that we recognized people were concerned about when we first looked at how we would help this sector. And they're all valid, but they're all things that we think we can help with, or that we do help with. So this was 10 years ago. And in 2015, we leveraged the expertise and the experience that the Australian and Canadian and New Zealand offices had already been delivering to form our first fully managed higher education partnership with the University of Bath. Are the University of Bath here today? There. If any of this stuff that we talk about in a moment sounds familiar, then some members of the University of Bath may wish to catch up, but we would love to talk to you about them as well. Okay, so this is a very common scenario that we found, is that there was a Moodle platform at the University of Bath, beautiful campus, lovely to go and visit and discuss their Moodle needs with them, which was self-hosted, self-managed, and falling foul of all of those challenges that I mentioned a moment ago. They were behind on versions. They didn't have a very strong patching strategy. Therefore, there weren't patches being applied. Upgrades were a challenge. We were talking 7 or 8 month upgrade projects. Upgrade projects would start in January. There would be a full team of people dedicated to it internally. Huge amounts of sort of custom management, end user management. Very, very strong pushback on a window where you might apply patches or upgrades. Mostly because there wasn't a consistent and strong enough voice or governance inside the university to sort of push for what this application required to be well managed and well maintained. We formed our partnership in 2015, moving the Moodle platform from the self-hosted team to our fully managed service that's AWS based. Immediately able to give them a very, very strong governance model around patching, upgrades, and sort of sustainability. But I have to say a really big thank you to Bath, because we were building the plane while we were flying this. This was our first very big uni. It was a very, very big learning experience for us. We've had some late nights, and we've had some long nights, and we've had some terse phone calls, but we've been very, very much a partnership all the way through that. And as we cut our teeth, thank you very much, Bath, for helping us to form this partnership and for helping us to learn how we had to provide a grown-up service for the higher ed sector. We did identify 1 or 2 really key sort of learnings or takeaways, which we still hold today. And by the way, we're still learning every day with every single partnership. But there are 3 really key things that underpin what the University of Bath, and many since, really required. They required full management. They required us to take responsibility, to provide you with certainty and assurance, to mitigate your risk, and to own the problems and solve them in collaboration. Not transactionally, not in a way where we're very hands-off, where you are pushed to a first-line support, followed by some kind of secret puzzle to try to break your way through to some second-line support, almost impossible to ever get through. So very much a close partnership, a partnership built on shared understanding and shared goals. And finally, openness, transparency, and honesty. If we make a mistake, or if something goes wrong with the platform, we are very collaborative with the University of Bath, in this case, about what, why, and how we could have fallen into that place and how we might solve it. And that has continued for 10 years to today. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the beauty of open source is not that you can share code, but it's that you can all benefit from the experiences and the journey that others have been on. So anybody else who's a partner of Catalyst, and I'm going to ask each of you in turn as we go through here, Bath cut the furrow for how we partner with you all as of today. And we continue to partner very closely with the University of Bath. Now, one thing we learned very early on, once we got this partnership into a good place, and we were feeling that we had a very good measure and a very good handle on what the platform required to be maintained, was that there is always a very significant lack of governance around self-hosted Moodles in these institutions. It's quite concerning sometimes. I'm going to give you some examples. But firstly, let me introduce you to our governance model. So we use a model that we call the 5S test. We've been using this now for 5-6 years, and it's really fallen out of the continued experience of working with universities. Firstly, it gives us a consistent approach to governance for any of the investment or spend that university needs to make for their platform. This framework is clear, it's presented in all of our partnerships very early on, and it's something that we continuously return to in order to ensure that everyone understands what they're about to get into or undertake. Very key to us is that this has a long-term partnership mindset. I'll give you an example of that in a minute. And then I believe this underpins our belief in open source and collaboration. So if we look at the 5S test and contextualize it in the Moodle space, You have to have a secure, fit-for-purpose, capable platform. So quite often we find that the security considerations about how to maybe enhance or improve your Moodle aren't really taken seriously enough or high enough. How many of you have added a plugin to your Moodle? Probably all of you, that's why you've got Moodle, I guess. And then the other question is, how many of you code reviewed that plugin to ensure that it was secure before you installed it in your Moodle? That's a very different number to the first number of hands that went up. That's slightly concerning, because essentially you probably picked that plugin up from the internet, and then I hope you didn't just drop it into your Moodle. But we do see that happen. And I think that's a really big key first factor, is that looking after a Moodle, there's a wonderful Spider-Man quote that I always use: with great freedom comes great responsibility. Moodle allows you to embellish and enhance your platform, but in doing so, you are responsible for what you're embellishing and enhancing your platform. Partnering with higher education institutions and then collaborating in this space has helped us to build really strong, robust security assessment and security review for plugins, but it's also significantly helped university and higher ed partners to better understand the responsibility they have to ensure their platform is fit and capable. Sustainable. This is a great one. Catalyst is a software development business at the same time as being a managed service provider. If every time somebody came to us with an idea, I've got a great idea, could you write this for me in code? If we just said yes, we would probably make a lot more revenue. But would what you've written be sustainable in the long term? Would our partnership sustain when you realize 2 years down the line that what you've written is not upgradable, will not work with future versions of Moodle, does not stand up to the constant change and innovation in the internet space? And so quite often we will say, no. That's very shocking to a customer. No, you don't want to do my project, but actually what we communicate here is that no, because this is not a sustainable project or a sustainable idea that you have here. It may work today, but you haven't thought of the future sustainability of your idea, your innovation, your plug-in, your integration. It's really key. Simplified. Open source is great because you could get really 10,000 requirements long. Oh, it must do this on a Tuesday at 7 a.m. specifically this way. That's kind of okay for you, but if you simplify your requirements to be more broad, and if you maybe change your requirement yourself to be a little bit more inclusive, then actually open source comes to life because other people might also be able to benefit from your slightly simplified solution. Standardized is the same. If you were to write features or functionality that would only work on a particular device or in a particular browser or in a particular day of the week or in a particular location, then again you haven't really achieved sort of a good sustainable model in the way that the 5S test tries to drive. And then for us, very important, because we're responsible for when your first day of term happens and your platform must not fail, is it scalable? So very often it's easy to write code. I'm going to give you some horror examples, as I mentioned, that look great, do the thing that you want when you test them on your local machine, but what happens when 10,000 users load that page at the same time? It falls over. Who here has had a Moodle fall over? That's pretty good. Cool. Who didn't want to admit that? Okay, so we use this in our partnerships today to underpin a very strong collaborative partnership model with our partners. And then I want to move on to the next customer case studies and give you the example, each of the learnings that we've taken from those partnerships as we've formed them. So the next one here is Cambridge University's Press and Assessment. Is anybody here from Cambridge University Press and Assessment? There they are, a couple up here. So we formed this partnership in 2017. Does anyone know who Cambridge Press and Assessment are? They deal with a lot of university entry sort of programs for students, certainly overseas students. They also hold some of the accreditation or qualifications, things like OCR and various other accreditations. They have 3,000 staff, hundreds of thousands of customers all around the world, and a need for many, many Moodles. When we went in and first worked with them, they had many, many Moodles, but they were all completely different and disparate. That is unsustainable. Every Moodle needs to be contracted as a completely unique island. So instead, we provided them with an idea or a model whereby we have a single master code-based version, a single master Moodle, and you can stamp that version of Moodle out multiple times over. If you need to upgrade, patch, or add a plugin to Moodle, you add it to one, you test it in that one platform, and then you deploy it to 10, 15 different Moodles. So therefore, again, you've shrunk the maintenance burden, and you're providing a more sustainable model that allows you to look after one Moodle code base and deploy many times. They're all themed different, they all look different, the plugins that are configured on and off may be different, but ultimately we're looking after one Moodle deployed many times. There's Mahara in this relationship too, the portfolio platform that Catalyst founded and maintained, and again there's multiple Maharas in this partnership. So the biggest learning that we took from Cambridge University Press and Assessment was that when they have multiple platform needs, we need to provide some better way of dealing with multiple platform needs. The other thing, and I think Cambridge Press and Assessment are going to be fine with me mentioning this, is that we really needed to get them to talk to each other better on the inside of Cambridge University Press and Assessment. So they were all doing lots of fantastic and wonderful Moodle pieces of work, somewhat in isolation. And that didn't drive this single platform, multiple deploy model. It didn't support it. So we've supported them to have a good committee, a good governance group that meets periodically to ensure that any new plugins going into their Moodle fit the bill, are understood, and that then all of the sites can leverage them or use them if they're going to add value to them. Very positive partnership, and we continue on that path with another Moodle just being stamped out for Cambridge University Press and Assessment right now. Okay, the next one. Dublin City University. I know where DCU are. There's Rob. Anyone else from DCU? Just you, Rob? Over there? Hello, Annabella? Awesome. That's great. Okay, so DCU, well, we formed our partnership in 2019. This kicked off, firstly, in a place where the website was self-hosted or hosted through a non-Moodle specialist. It was causing some challenges around looking after Moodle effectively or properly. We went through a real horror show with this platform because we tried to move to a new infrastructure architecture, and it didn't work. And we had a long week of very painful 24/7 meetings with somebody who now works in my team, Mark Glynn, who used to represent DCU. And it was a torrid week. I think most of us have got scars mentally for that. But we remained in partnership. We didn't fall out. We didn't start blaming. We worked together to the common goal or the common solution. And actually, we proved or demonstrated that the cloud provider that we were using, that I'm not going to name because I'm being filmed, had a fail or a significant bug within their container orchestration service. So we very quickly moved them to our preferred cloud platform, and since then the platform stability has not been a problem. But again, when you're working with large complex applications of this nature in very large complex cloud architectures as we do, if problems emerge, there is no gain or upside from simply falling or descending into a row or a debate. The partnership must maintain, and that's something that we achieved and that we've learned immensely from. Like, don't use that cloud provider. How many of you are hosted in the cloud? Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, now, because the platform stability is good and the governance model around the loop DCU VLE platform is sound, we're now partnering with DCU on something that's much more exciting, which is early student engagement and soft skills. And so new students join the university, they have never seen a VLE before, or they're not using the VLE, or haven't used this type of VLE. There's a very, very big risk that you disenfranchise or that you disengage your students very early on. Maybe they're not digital natives, maybe their technology isn't their forte, and actually they're immediately presented with this relatively wide, all-encompassing platform that they are now required to use, to submit assignments on time, to do quizzes and examination. And that can be quite daunting. So our team now with Annabella, who are going to be talking about this on Thursday at 4 p.m, I think, are delivering a program of work to ensure that the onboarding and the early soft skill engagement with the DCU Loop platform is a positive experience that then hopefully drives positive engagement with the Moodle down the line. It doesn't all stop with the technology. There's a huge part of these partnerships that requires you to ensure that the end users are well supported and well maintained and well looked after. And that's what we're doing with DCU. And we're very proud of that one. Okay, then in 2019, stuff started to get a little bit crazy in that we took on some very, very large, complex, high-traffic, high-concurrency platforms. This one is one of our largest. This is the National Open University of Nigeria. It's a distance university, similar to the Open University in the UK. It has 600,000 active users a year, and it has presented us with some of the most complex hosting and performance problems we've ever seen. Mostly, again, because some of the administrators weren't well versed in how to use Moodle. Some of the experiences we've had, 50,000 exams all start at 9 a.m. That was a fun day. It was a great day. Very fun. The other one, and those of you who, and maybe, who's a tech here? Who does software development or engineer? Yeah, great. You'll understand, you'll appreciate this. They created a forum with 600,000 users in it, and then configured it to email everybody on every reply. Yeah. And AWS just called us and said, what on earth is your site doing? Because it has a queue of hundreds of millions of emails that it wants to send. And they were still adding new replies to the forum. So that was a fun day as well. But all of these are things that we've learned, that we go through this journey with, and that we take forward to whoever the next partner might be, to ensure that that doesn't bite us or them again. This is probably on some days the busiest site we run. But other days it's the quietest site, and that's actually a complex problem in itself. You can't buy physical hosting tin to deal with 3 days of very, very busy traffic and make it cost effective when there might be 3 months when it's very, very quiet. That's something that cloud and scaling allows you to do. So this is a very, very positive partnership with us. As you can see, we're on our 6th year. I'm off to meet them next week at the MoodleMoot, or next month at the MoodleMoot Africa. And we continue to sort of develop their Moodle competence over at the Noun partner. Okay, the next one. This is very interesting. I bet nobody here from the University of Coventry, right? Okay, because I want to talk about the University of Coventry in a slightly different light. They migrated away from Moodle. They decided that some of their myths and challenges with Moodle's how people perceive it or how the tool was the problem was good enough for them to pick a proprietary platform instead. Some of you might know which platform they use. Some of you might have had an experience with it, and it went bust. And they were left with staring down a very, very dark place whereby they don't have a VLE anymore because the proprietary provider literally went pop. And what did they have to do? They had to buy the bones of that business and in-house it and continue to keep it alive for the past couple of years with no community of support in the way that Moodle does, no easy way to get out of that situation. And the reason I bring that up is because we had a fantastic partnership with Coventry, but the procurement decision, from my opinion, was taken out of the hands of the users and the people who knew what the platform needed or what the platform should do. And they were sold a dream that didn't materialize and has put them in a really, really challenging space. And ultimately, 3 years after they bet the house on a VLE platform that was quite a new and upstart and proprietary platform, that has really ended quite badly for them, and no doubt they're going to have to go through another VLE procurement process and start over again. Tim?
How many of the very senior managers who took that procurement decision are still working at Coventry?
Talk to me after this chat. Very good question. But again, the benefits of open source. This cannot happen to you with a Moodle. It's your code base, essentially. The data inside it is yours. If you have somebody like Catalyst or another partner looking after it for you, and they go pop, ultimately, you can just take it yourself if that's what you want to do, or you can move it to another provider. But with this closed, proprietary model, this could happen. Some of you might have seen how much debt some of the other proprietary VLE providers are in, which is an interesting fact. Okay. And then, one of our proudest partnerships is Alistair or Jason here? No, they've heard me say this stuff for years, so they're fine. We formed a partnership with University College London. Strange date that. Something happened in that date that put a lot of pressure on online platforms. And UCL, 80,000 active users, many hundreds of thousands of logins a day, were very concerned that they could not deal with the surge in demand they were expecting for online. So we moved UCL to our cloud platform, scalable cloud offering. The thing that we really have to credit UCL for, and I think all of you, and I'm not sure, it's slightly annoying they're not here, but I would like to give them a round of applause. The amount of contribution that UCL have given everybody in the Moodle community is significant. This is a huge mission-critical platform. A comment from one of the team members at UCL recently was that Catalyst allows them to sleep soundly at night, which I thought was really, really nice. They had always had somewhat Moodle performance issues around beginning of term or quizzes, but particularly they are leaders in Moodle UK thought leadership. They bring together, there are some UCL here, so that round of applause was for yourselves as well. They are thought leaders in this community in the UK. They ensure that anything they're building, developing, or inventing, let's say, is feasible to go back to Moodle Core, and they significantly work tirelessly, but also will fund the additional piece of work required to get it back into Moodle Core, including engaging with Core, making changes when Core say that this is not how we would perceive it needs to be for future sustainability and so on. So UCL are really fantastic in this Moodle community and at driving Moodle forward. So a big thanks to them, as I said. Something that's quite interesting there, and I didn't realise this, they've had no critical incidents in over 4 years. And I remember critical incidents when we first took UCL on and we had to clean up some inefficiencies, and now we haven't had any, and that's actually quite an interesting achievement. So lots of learning there. The next one that I'd like to talk about is Queen Mary. Is there anyone from Queen Mary here? Hello. Good. Okay. This was a very challenging project when it started, and I mean that in the politest way. We inherited a Moodle that had had very poor governance around it, and therefore it was full of very poor code. I'm going to give an example to the developers. There was queries running in the theme that loaded on every page. Might be quite easy to do that, but it really doesn't work when you suddenly have 10,000 people loading pages over and over again. So the Queen Mary platform started in a pretty bad place, and the Queen Mary senior leadership were very open with us. They said, this is a stopgap whilst we find another platform. That was how far Moodle was burned. Now, that's a very different scenario. I was at Queen Mary last week, and they say, we have nothing but praise for Moodle. It's absolutely fine. It does everything we need. And actually, they're pushing it forward with some great work in a graduate attribute space, which is also in a talk on Thursday, I believe, at 2-ish, 2 for DC. Pardon? That way. So DCU, their talk is at 2 on Thursday about soft skills, and Queen Mary, their talk is at 4 on Thursday about graduate attributes. They also have a Mahara and a tight integration between their Moodle and Mahara. But it's really significant that the application or the tool was blamed for all of their ills, and when you sort that problem out, people realize the application is not the problem, it's the governance and the maintenance and the taking care of the platform that has been the challenge. And once that's resolved, Moodle excels. It has significantly more functionality and significantly more potential than many of the other platforms. The next one I just want to touch on is that we then formed a partnership with the University of Cambridge, which was based on examination. How many of you run real summative exams in your Moodle? How many of you had it crash? Oh, yeah, 1 or 2, yeah. It's got better. Some of that is because of UCL contributions and various others, things like course mod info and various other changes. educating staff to not manually edit the course and open the quiz at the time that the quiz starts, because that would drop all the caches and so on. So lots of quite technical stuff that has been going back into Moodle to improve some of those performance issues. But the University of Cambridge needed an online exam platform, and that's what they came to us for. With the power of cloud, the infinite scalability of cloud, we were able to provide them with a "it must not fail" cast iron guarantee on online exams. So that was fantastic. And now I'm nearly at the end of our new partnerships, but I just wanted to say that we continue to form new partnerships. The most recent ones that have come along are the London School of Economics and Political Science, and most recently, I'm not sure if they're here, University of Portsmouth. No, not this time, next year. And also NATO School, a big security drive on this one, as you can appreciate. These last three that I'm just touching on now, London School of Economics, NATO School, Aberamagow, and University of Portsmouth, have benefited so much from all of those that went before in building this really, really full and holistic managed service for the higher education space, not just in the UK, but in all of our partnerships around the world. Everybody benefits from the experiences, good and bad, that others go through. Yeah. Okay, so just before I ask some questions, I just wanted to point out, well, what does that mean for today? Because the platform is now, I'm going to say rock solid. We're seeing no problems. It's a fun time of year. We're about to see all of the students come and load test our platforms proper in the next couple of weeks. That's always fun. But what else have we seen in our learnings lately? Now, we have observed that whilst there are infinite needs for hosting and application and consulting problems, there are always a couple of little edge cases we're seeing round and round the edges that are consistently being requested. So, for example, one of them is Stack as a plugin. Does anyone here run Stack as a plugin? I would like to just make a note and say thank you to the two maintainers of Stack who are in the audience. Chris Sangwin, make yourself seen or known, or there you go. And Tim Hunt, also down here. So Stack is a plugin that adds significant and improved functionality or quiz or assessment sort of tooling to Moodle, but it requires external compute services to run. GeoMaxima is the name of the sort of packages or libraries that are required to make it work. It allows you to put nice visual and graph engine material into your Moodle and use it in some of the sort of sciences and maths and various other subjects. Without that back-end compute, without additional servers or without additional resources in the infrastructure space, it doesn't work. And a lot of the institutions that we're talking to who are self-hosted say, well, we've got Moodle, but we can't have that piece because our IT teams are struggling to agree to take that piece on or to facilitate or to maintain that additional plugin. There's another one, Code Runner. Does anyone use the Code Runner plugin? So this is for computer sciences programs, amongst others. Similarly, it requires a back-end service to run. And a lot of people are finding that they might be self-hosting and their IT team are capable of keeping up with Moodle maintenance, but asking for all of these slightly obscure and one-off servers in the back end to do more stuff can sometimes be a challenge. Who uses course backups? Who has course backups turned on? Particularly self-hosters. A lot of the time, people can't turn that on because it causes a storage problem. It blows out your storage on your disks on your local servers. And then another one, who has integration problems where you would like to integrate to more systems, student record systems, grade systems, but normally you need to write code, case by case by case, and maintain that code in order to pull off that integration. Your developers come and go, and then you end up with a maintenance burden that's unfeasible. So we have been building, in our next phase of this kind of understanding what the market and what our customers and what our partners need, some solutions to self-hosters, whereby you can have some of the benefits that Catalyst have developed in these partnerships over years without having to possibly move whole hog to our full managed service. And so that's what we're talking about at our stand this week, but it's just almost a continuation or the next step in our learning about how do we better support Moodle for everybody. I think we've got a pretty good place now with all of our managed customers. How do we now support Moodle for those of you who are hosted or set up or maintained in some other way can we provide some of those expertise and those shared benefits to all of you? That's what we're working on next. Above all else, it all hinges on good collaboration, community, and sharing. And so I do hope, I'm going to ask for some questions in a moment, that some of you might recognize some of the experience I've described, and some of you might be feeling them right now and want to talk to some of the other institutions that we've partnered with, or with the sea of red that sits up there. But ultimately, that's what underpins this entire community, and that's what Martin and those who've come after Martin have done so well, is build a fantastic community of collaboration that all stands on one another's shoulders to achieve future success. I am going to stop for questions. I do have a couple more slides here, but if you want to see sort of the educator's pack in full, then that's what our stand is for. So I'm not going to sit here and sort of pitch this to you, but I will throw up my Q&A slides. Show you a little slide there of just the AU, Canada and EU teams. We can't fit New Zealand on because there's about 240 of them. So just imagine it's huge panorama style. But thank you very much, and I'm open to questions. Here's one. Could you say your name as well and your... Yeah.
Hello. So I'm Monica Gheorghiu from University of Savoie-Mont-Blanc. So I have a question, but I also have an anecdote, if you'll allow me. A few years ago in a French MoodleMoot, there were two French Moodle admins who said that their teachers were very disappointed by Moodle. So they took advantage of an upgrade from 1.9 to 2 to change the name of their platform. So they upgraded to 2.0 and they changed the name. It was not called Moodle anymore, and everybody was happy.
Yep. It's great, isn't it?
So, and my question is, you were talking about sustainability and that sometimes you said no to your clients. I would like to hear some examples. What are some things to which you said no?
Sure. So firstly, the anecdote there was that a simple name change from Moodle to Learn, for example, and we've seen this, can have the effect of completely removing everyone who says, I dislike Moodle. I've seen this happen over a weekend, and people come in and go, I love Learn. I couldn't stand Moodle, and the only thing you've done is change the colours and the logo. Yes, so examples of when we have said no to something that's unsustainable. I'm not going to name this partner, but once upon a time we had a partner who was building a offline learning tool, which was designed to allow you to take Moodle essentially in full, all of your courses and database, and clone it into a laptop, and then carry it with you to a place where no internet existed, and then create a local LAN network whereby the classroom full of people could connect to a sort of Wi-Fi with some DNS trickery, and then it looked and felt as if they were learning on the live platform. But we were looking at like a sustainability model long term, and the figures or the numbers that would be required to maintain this, you would be talking with 5 to 6 zeros on the end long term, and the sort of hardware requirements that would be wrapped around that. And then also the sort of dedicated team or dedicated staff that would be needed, almost a fully fledged business on its own to kind of manage the entire requirement for that piece. The client, this is a must-have requirement. We must be able to take our Moodle offline into places where there is no internet. That's fine, but there is a cost attached, and that cost is unfortunately not ignorable. If we had just built the next version of that by upgrading to the latest versions of laptop device or the latest version of PHP language and so on in that offline build, we would have been just back into another very, very painful discussion 12 months or 18 months later when the whole thing had to be done again and again. There was a misunderstanding that if you build something once, it will now just work forever. And if we don't communicate that to you early on, we are burning our partnership with you in the long term because we are essentially not being honest with you up front and we're not providing you with truth about the sustainability of your solution. So that's an extreme example, it's real, but we see many other examples of this where people want to build something today, but they don't consider the ongoing maintenance burden of that item, and that's a sustainability problem, and that's where we often will start by saying maybe that's not valid. If they accept all of those risks with the 5S test, then fine, but often when they're fully informed, they don't. Who and where?
Sorry, Tim Hunt here. Follow-up question. In these cases where you say no to what they originally ask you to build, how often are you ever able to find a way of achieving at least some of the original business goals, but maybe in a different way technically or something?
Okay, so Tim, thank you. The question is where we may have said no to the full and sort of complex requirement, do we often find workarounds or alternate solutions? Yes. We're definitely a consulting partner that will provide you with options that you might not have considered, and we're definitely going to try to solve the problem that you present. Very often, frankly, it begins with coming back from your detailed requirement to look at the big picture problem that you're trying to solve. If we took every list of requirements as written and just said, yes, we can build that, and that, and then we deliver it to you, there's some great cartoons actually about developers' experience of this. You know, they thought the swing was going to have a tire, and then they thought the swing would, and what you get given is not what you expect. So it's not even in the cases where we say no, it's in every sort of project that we get presented to us. It's really important to step back and ensure that they are fully understanding both the complexity and the reality of what they're asking for and whether it can be solved much simpler. And yes, we normally solve the problem.
Andrew from Catalyst here. One other world in which we've said no sometimes is when people have wanted to build a small subset of Moodle Workplace or previously Totara functionality where the ongoing cost implications really means they should be looking at one of those two platforms in total cost of ownership.
Yes, so Andrew from Catalyst Canada and Australia noted that another example is where somebody is trying to plagiarize a platform or something that already exists. I have another example of this, where somebody wanted us to proxy connection to a paid-for resource library tool so as they could serve many thousands of users access to a library asset that they'd paid for once. Obviously, we won't facilitate that solution, but it's another example where people come with something that they want us to build. We could say yes, but we would be doing a disservice to our partnership if we allowed that to happen, and possibly breaking some laws as well.
Thank you. John Paul Posada from UNSW in Australia. Just had a question. I noticed that you had an educator pack there for introductions, and I noticed you mentioned a few things about people switching from Moodle. Would you happen to have such a pack for people considering moving away from Moodle for, say, a large institution that might be thinking about it? To say, you mentioned that some of the LMSs out there are, in financial disarray. Would you happen to have a pack like that somebody could present to their university in case they're thinking about it?
Yeah, okay, so thank you. The question is, if an institution is considering a VLE review or a migration away from Moodle, do we have any way in which to help you counter or reconsider or maybe just be fully informed before you make a decision that might be rash? Or and actually, let's be clear, if they move for good reason, then fine, but quite often we see people who move for not necessarily a fully informed reason. We do. It's the Catalyst Canada team. They come packaged in red. And Catalyst Australia team, noting that you're in Australia. Chat to those guys. We've been through these kinds of scenarios a lot. We will definitely be able to provide responses to the myths and the common falsehoods which people may hold about Moodle, which are driving them to dislike the platform. Often they are, it fell over, it doesn't perform, it doesn't look very nice, it's clunky. Those are not necessarily problems with Moodle. There are problems with the implementation and the sustainability model and the governance that you've got around the Moodle. And that does not mean that spending between 5 and 10 times more on a very, very fixed, inflexible proprietary solution will make any of those things go away. Normally it doesn't.
So do you want to mention our candidate client with Stack?
Sure. We mentioned earlier that there is a Stack plugin that we use, which provides some added functionality for sort of maths and sciences and various other subject matters. A Canadian university moved to Canvas, and it doesn't do it at all. So they have bought a headless Moodle to run behind, so as they can use Stack and plug it into this inferior product, and therefore run these subject matter pieces through that product.
They now pay for 2 LMSs to do the job that one LMS was doing anyway.
Yep.
You told a lot of stories about the way like administrators, system administrators made mistakes or the infrastructure was the culprit. But do you also have like stories where the actual Moodle core was the culprit, where there were database queries which were very ineffective? You may have some stories.
Yes.
Or where
We have many. Moodle won't mind me saying this because we.
No, but then you solved it for good for all of us, which is a nice story.
So the question is that I may have said, or we do agree that in many cases the infrastructure was either insufficient or not well architected to deal with Moodle's needs. Do we ever find examples where the code is the problem? Yes, all the time. But it's a really, really important point that we can fix it. We can collaborate. There are many examples whereby a change, an upgrade, an unintended consequence presents in a performance degradation. But actually, we know many, many minds in Moodle, outside of Moodle, and across the world, who, when we find those issues, will flag them, share the solution, and make sure that it makes its way back to Moodle as well. And we are constantly pushing fixes up. And there are many heroes in this room who have fixed inefficient code that all of you are benefiting from. Thank you very much, everybody. And if you would like to chat more, we're at the stand in the bottom, in the basement, -2. It'd be great to come and see and hear all of your individual Moodle stories in your institutions. Thank you.